So Leo is here again. Like Leo was previously at Atlassian for a good 6 years, and he's an engineer, but a bit more focused on the front end. I think like Max's talk was great. We've got a bit of behind the scenes of Cursor today. Leo is very much in the front of the scenes. He's a Cursor user, or he's using these tools, and he's got a lot of insights to share in terms of how you can use things like skills and all kinds of techniques to make sure you're getting the most out of like this agentic workflow that we're all becoming accommodated to. So I'm very excited to hear Leo's talk. And yeah, can we give Leo a big round warm applause?
Okay, so there you go. So today I'm talking about how we're shipping Vibe Codes apps with multi-agent AI workflow. So how I have been using AI personas to help catching bugs for multiple bugs like performance, UX, and also everything that you want for make sure that your app is product ready for real users. Okay, so a quick disclaimer. Yeah, this is a Cursor Meetup, but this talk can be used in Cursor 100%, but can be used anywhere else. If you're using multiple tools like I am, it might be worth for you. So this is the agenda. I hope I don't stay too long, so let's go. All right, so first talk a little bit of the background that we all have been using AI to make building apps and implement features, right? So in 2026, everyone can just generate using LLM, going Cursor or any app, Milk app, right? Everybody can do that. That's so easy. However, that happens a lot is that apps are not always working as expected, right? There's an example here. I hope you guys can see that the to-do app that we have here, the users try to delete one of the tasks. Whoops, that is a small bug, but pretty bad that it's deleting all the tasks. Have ever happened to you guys using LLM? Happened to me sometimes, right? Yeah, and also there's a lot of security vulnerabilities built by LLM. So the stats tells that 45% of the LLM code has vulnerability codes. Also, a lot of performance issues with generating LLM. So we are avoiding reviewing because we trust AI a lot, right? So the last topic here is that we have this false sense of security that we think that we're doing shipping security code. Actually, LLM is copying a lot of Stack Overflow and some open source personal projects that doesn't look after as much as enterprise does the out of the data, right? Cool. So that's the first failure, right? The most people trying, let's try these models, how good they are. Just a simple prompt, build me a Flatbird app. Well, you can try the same model 3 times in a row, they'll be totally different apps, right? That's how it works. LLM doesn't have like a consistent prototype generation, right? So for example, and if you don't decide yourself, LLM is gonna take the decisions for you. So for example, you're gonna choose, I'm gonna use a mobile app, or that's like a console app or a web desktop. What language am I gonna use? I'm gonna use Swift, iOS, or I'm gonna use Java, right? So we are giving the direct the wheels to the LLMs, but now I'm trying to emphasize that we should actually going back, we should drive the decision ourselves, okay? You probably already know about spec-driven. I hope everybody knows spec-driven. If it's okay if you don't, I can give a little bit of context if you want. So spec-driven is, instead of doing code yourself, you actually write a lot of documentation in specs in plain, right? So you are the one deciding of what you're gonna drive. And the first thing you have to do, every project that you have using LLM, if you don't have a PRD, raise your hand if you don't have one. Your homework tonight is to write a PRD for your app, okay? Yes. What is a PRD, you might take? Actually, Atlassian has a great blog post about it. So it's actually a product requirements document that you write everything about your project. So from your brainstorm, you write a proper scope, what happens in your project, right? How are you gonna build the app? Where are you gonna publish? Or why are you building this app? What is the reason? Who are your consumers? What are you gonna build? And when are you gonna deliver it? So all of these things should be part of your PRD, okay? If you want to talk listening a bit more about the spec-driven, great talk into the prompt engineer, which is the conference that we are got invited to, Josh. Yeah, so spec-driven impacts. So if you don't want to try to write yourself, you can download some scripts. I have a lot of big lists here. Have you guys any used any of those here, like superpowers? Cursor has the plain mode. It's pretty much spec-driven, okay? It's going to write some markdowns for you. Sometimes you don't see, but it's actually writing markdowns. If you don't know Markdown, I'll come back to you that. And a lot of other libraries, BMAD, Caseiro, OpenSpec, there is too many to talk about. If you want to try out, have fun, but make sure when you install all of them, the ones you don't like, try uninstall, otherwise you're going to bump your context window with no reason. I'll talk to you soon about that. Okay, so Markdown, if you're not an engineer, Markdown is just a very easy way, a simplest way possible to write a rich text using a document file. It's a simple file, you can use any editor you want, and just make some fancy rich text using some markups. If you don't know how to use it, well, use Cursor, has an amazing preview, it can write for you, and in 2026, my recommendation, if you want to learn any language at all, to write any code, Markdown. If you don't know Markdown, another homework for you, learning Markdown, okay? Why? Because LLM speaks Markdown way more than everybody else. Right, so I like to use some toolings. So the ones that I'm using mostly are superpowers. I'm going to talk a little bit. So I love the skills that they have. One of them is the brainstorming. Why? Remember that I told you that you're going to drive instead of LLM? So when you use this brainstorm, you're actually doing a lot of brainstorm. And this superpower skill help you to find great questions for you. What are you going to solve? How are you going to build? So you don't forget anything while you're building your PRD or even any features you're actually, since I started using this, any feature that I'm writing, I start to the brainstorm. That's what you do on a daily basis using if you're a software engineer, right? Or if you're a designer or anything. You're just trying to brainstorm fast, sometimes with your team. Well, now use LLM. Another tools that are very helpful to use spec-driven, also GitHub spec kit. And as I mentioned, BMAD also has a lot of things. There's way more, as I mentioned, but these are very popular. When you build an app, right, unless you are an amazing super engineer doing an amazing app by yourself, you probably need a team, right? Even if you have a small startup or enterprise, we have multiple teams. In our teams, we have a lot of specialists. You have designers, you have product minds, you have architects, you have the infrastructure engineers, you have front-end engineers, back-end engineers, database engineers, security experts, and the QAs. QAs are very important for your app. You probably are the only one doing the QA yourself, right? Well, you should use LLM to help with that. That's what I'm trying to explain to you today. Not explain, to promote. So the way that I like to do is using personas. What is a persona, right? Well, I like to say that act is like actors. So imagine the LLM or yourself are a director of a movie, and then you tell LLM to impersonate like a designer. So you have used probably when you use prompt engineer a few years ago, we used to do that, right? So instead of just saying, oh, let's build an app, first you need to say, you are a designer, LLM. So think as a designer, or you are a software engineer. So you think about it as a software engineer, right? And the best approach is to have multiple personas because you simulate a team all by yourself. That's amazing. So the ones that I always recommend, if you don't have a security expert, I don't know much about security. I always look into vulnerabilities, bump the library and pray. No, I use a security expert for me and tell LLM to find the security vulnerabilities for me, or a DBA, anything like that, right? And my favorite is the Adversarial, but I'll talk to you soon. So if you are using a library, open source, you can install, very simple, just install using, you can use the Cursor. I think from Cursor library, you can find a lot of these tools. BMAD, I'm pretty sure it's there. They have some personas as well. I have used BMAD a little bit, but for personal projects, I prefer actually using the superpowers. The Compound Engineer. Compound Engineer is another library that does spec-driven, but for me, the highlights that they have is the quantity of personas that they have. So if you're using Cursor and install these libraries, as I mentioned, you just do / command and then you search for that. If you write review, you're going to find, for example, the CA doc review. They have a lot of personas, so a little bit more than BMAD, but I really like that you can choose it for reviewing your documentation. Why you want to review documentation? Well, I mentioned you wrote the documentation, do a brainstorm, everything like that, but you have to review with different perspective in mind, right? As your team, for example, if you write a Confluence page, a documentation in a page, you ask your teams, you ask your designers to approve, you ask your product manager to approve, or your security expert, anything like that. So use LLM, you want to do the same thing. So that's why using these queues with different personas, you're going to review your documentation even before you write any code at all, because they can find a lot of flaws, especially the adversarial. So Besides documents, I also want to, obviously, every time you ship code, you need to do code review, right? Are we doing code review nowadays? We're just approving everything. Our LLM is passing. Our build is green, merch, right? Please, let's use that. Right? If you want to, if for enterprise, you might want to use some toolings like CodeRabbit is the one that uses a lot of code reviews. If you don't have the enterprise, you might want to look into that or something similar. Why I like compound engineers? Look how many personas they have into the, just for the code review, like that. So many. I don't even talk to all of them to you. They don't have an accessibility one, but I'm erasing a PR. Okay, so if you're interested in accessibility, I am. Your apps should make sure that it works for screen readers, works for colorblind, motion impairing, and all of that. So that's the only thing that's missing in the library that I like to use. Why do I like the Adversarial Reviewer so much? Do you know when you raise a PR and that's very annoying engineer that keep on complaining everything that you write? You know, I would think that's a pain, but they find so many issues in my reviewing. So imagine if you want somebody to do that. Say, and actually, it's not your code, it's LLM, so you don't really care. So the adversarial try to find any big thing that you can ever think about, he's going to do that. Okay. And the best part is that actually, if you use only like the reviewer, a single agent without the personas, they don't have conflicts. But if you have multiple, they actually have different conflicts. Oh, I think you shouldn't do this. It's too risky. Oh, but the trade-off is okay. So that's why we should categorize them by priorities. Priority 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Then you can actually think yourself as you're driving your orchestration this, what priorities I should take over and what decisions should I make. Again, you are taking the wheel. LLM is writing all the things for you, but you are the one making the decisions. That's what matters for your app or your feature. However, you might think, okay, but if I have like 20 personas or 10 or whatever, am I not going to use a lot of context window? Yes, of course you are. And if you don't know about the dump zone and also the context engineer, watch this talk. It is very important. Have you ever tried to use LLM and then you started complaining, oh my God, I just told you 10 minutes ago, I told you this is a blue button, not a red button. Why do you red again? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. When you start to listen to, oh, you're right, you are 100% in the dump zone, and you should write a handover document and then start from scratch. Oh, but I'm going to have to do all by myself again? No, you are using spec-driven, right? So all that you have decided is already written on your repo, on your project. So you can use that as a context, way shorter than all these complaints that you have fighting between you and LM. So reduce your context window every time. So you can watch these using Cursor. Cursor have very good tooling. Have you seen this loading bar here? And then you might say, oh, but I trust they have an alt compact. It works, but it's so much better when you say, I want to stop that right now, instead of they start deciding what they think is priority or not. So my recommendation to actually use a handover approach. Every time you think you have enough or LLM start to be very annoying and dump, you tell, okay, time to stop, write me a handover, everything that we decide, write down as a markdown, and then I'll start from scratch. Okay, I hope you do that. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the meme, right? Yeah. So have you ever tried that? Oh, is this mushroom edible? Yes, you can eat, definitely. Oh, yeah, that was poison. Do you want to learn about poison mushrooms? Yeah, that's definitely hallucinations. Did I skip hallucinations? Oh, no. Yep, I think I skipped that. Sorry, I was talking about hallucinations. So hallucinations when the LLM actually is so confident, but it doesn't know what they're doing. Why this happens? LLM work with prediction, right? They are not calculators that you when you say 2 + 2 is 4. They know 2 + 2 is 4 because of their data. But if you actually give it like a complex math, they actually are going to predict that. So don't trust LLM every time because they are very, 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 very much, we're going to say very convicted and going to say, yes, eat this mushroom, it's edible. But then remember of this meme every time they are trusting and LLM hallucinates a lot. That's why a few years ago we used to hate LLM because they hallucinate more. Models are getting much, much better, but it still happens, especially when you're in the dump zone. Especially. okay, so how can I deal with a context window besides doing this alt compacts and handovers documents? Well, we can use some harness-egineering, right? So another talk for you guys to watch from the same conference, the amazing conference, by the way. We use guardrails. What exactly are harness-egineering? Well, using guardrails, just like a normal app, when you write software, if you're a software engineer or your team, they have unit tests, right? They have automated tests, or they have linting, or they use TypeScript to make sure that your code is actually understanding each other. Well, LLM should have the same thing. It's not very different, actually. So you have to have the same guardrails for LLM. So make sure that if you don't have that, well, we can ask LLM to write for you. Say, can you please make sure you have all guardrails? Yes, your build is going to be a little slower to merge. So when I say that, when you raise a PR or you compile, you might have to run a lot of tests. Yes, but these are, imagine that each one of them is a little test that you might break the new feature or new change from another hallucination for LLM. If you have guardrails, they're going to protect you. Okay. Another one is the accessibility test or any other types as well. But okay, but what about how I prevent hallucination, right? We've been talking about that. Tests are great because if it breaks, it's green or red. There is no other way. But when hallucination happens, you ask them to be concise. So you tell me, how confident are you? You're telling me this button should be the button should be blue. How confident are you? Is that what we discussed? So when you start asking these questions to LLM, they actually come back to you and reason a bit more. Just like your engineering team said, oh yeah, you're right, I forgot about that. LLM has the same thing. So when I use the compound engineer, I love that because they actually give me this. So every code review has a criteria, and then they actually tell me how confident they are. They give me a percentage from 0 to 100, how confident they are. So I really hope that you guys understand how that works. I gave a lot of techniques that have been used in the industry, right? We started in the prompt engineer, and then went to vibe coding, and then we went to context, spec-driven, context, harness, but with 2026 in July, actually August. So now we have the new buzzword. Oh, we have a loop engineering. What the hell is that? Well, it's not that magic. It's actually just the same thing that we just talked about, but now your guardrail is to tell your LLM, you only done when you are 100% confident in everything that we talk about is true. That's pretty much what it is. So this is the diagram that I've been working on. So actually I'm writing a SKU to work with both supervising and compound engineer, but you can use it anywhere. What I like is, so you start with the brainstorm as we talk about, and then when you write your plan, again, review your plan. Don't forget that part. So that's number 3 here. And then review is going to have a lot of the personas that we talk about. When designer talk about a product engineer, all these guys different, talk their opinions and decisions and how concise they are. So then you go, review, and when you're happy, you start building app. And then after building codes, you want to do the same thing using code review instead. And then that's your loop. After all of these, now you have all the guardrails passing, your builds are green, and your app is way more confident than the first flatbird that you just said, right for me. So yeah, that's hopefully, I hope that's what I tried to explain today. And yeah, I'm ready for questions, and I need some water. I can get a water later, no worries. Yeah, I talked a lot about the things.
Great talk, thanks.
Thank you.
You quickly talked about this in the end, talking about like a confidence threshold.
Yes.
Which I started using recently as well, where it's kind of like cannot just assume or just guess anymore, and I don't accept that. But do you use like a confidence threshold on each persona? Because I guess what could happen is designer is very confident, has to be this way, and the engineer persona says this way, but both of them are not actually having the context you have, like the overarching overload, whatever. Like how do you use confidence levels on a persona level and then on an overarching level?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. Yeah, so you can trust 100% the LLM if you want to, but I actually like to take the decisions myself. So I like to look into what the designer told me, what the security engineer that was against the designer, and then I'll look into them and I will decide myself. So that's what I was talking about. I am driving the wheel. So in that case, I have their confidence, but then I will look into that and decide myself. So I don't trust LLM to take all the decisions yet. That's my main goal, but I don't think I'm there yet. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Maybe just one follow-up question. You're an engineer, right?
Yes.
How do you manage personas and make decisions for those personas in an area that you're not, let's say, a designer, just for argument's sake, right? Like what I sometimes do is I just get outside the entire Cursor ecosystem, take almost like a summary markdown and give it to an LLM or something else completely outside and try to kind of like play the ones against each other. But like, how do you make sure that areas you don't have all the experience, you're still making the right decision and not?
Yeah. So if you can use a consulting, it'll be great, right? But I think the idea is to, if you don't have a designer on the team, like for small projects, you as a project manager, you need to take these decisions, right? So you can use as many LLM you want. You can use Google, you can use consulting, but at the end of the day, you're the one who wants to make your app, and you should take the decision. So that's how I've been thinking. I don't have another answer, but that's what I'll tell to you. Yeah, you take the decisions, right? If your app it looks ugly, or the designer say, "Oh, it has a flaw," but you really like it because it's so cute, you're the one to take the decisions, right? And another thing is that you actually want to do is you can also ask your consumers as well, right? So we are just talking about the way all the way to the shipping, but after shipping, you should monitor your logs, you monitor your errors, you monitor also feedback. So make sure that you have a feedback on your app, and then your consumers might tell flaws that even you and LLM didn't find. That's probably all I'll tell you. Yeah. Hope that helps you.
All right. Any other questions? Yep.
Good question.
Thank you. I have some personal experience using the AI harness, and what I found is the planning stage that generating those spec files really important. And one of my experience is quite human involved, and there's not much autonomy there. So you have to dig into all those questions, right? So, and then in your whole workflow, you touch a little bit on the loop engineer. So my question is, because my personal experience, once you figure out the spec, and the spec, all of divided into small tasks, the LLM, the AI is pretty good to pick up the small tasks and finish them immediately without any back and forth. So what's this looping engineer come from? I mean, I try to understand that.
Yeah, great question. So I like to take the decisions myself. So I would try, I mean, if I don't have time or if I know a feature is not critical, I'll probably trust LLM, and then I can actually turn it on and say, you're going to decide when it's finished. So actually, Compound Engineer has a whole flow. They start all the way from brainstorm to finish. I forgot what is the command. I think it's the GST, which is get stuff done. And then they will do all the way for you, and they're going to use sub-agents to build context window, and they will do all of it for you. But it's all dependent on the feature and how critical it is. At the end of the day, it's your app. It's you, the one who want to trust or not the LLM. But the looping is pretty much just an automatic trigger to say, just finish when these arguments that I want you is done. So pretty much it's like a condition. You only finish our infinite loop until these conditions are green. Yeah, that's what the looping is. Yeah.
I just add on to that. I definitely feel like I've run into situations myself with like a complex bug or something where it's like it has to do a bunch of setup, especially if it's not something you can easily isolate and test. Maybe it has to test in the browser and try something, test in the browser, try something. Like that process can literally go on for like an hour or so, right? And so if you don't want to have to say like, okay, try the next thing. Okay, try the next thing. Like you're just letting it auto loop, right? And I think, as you said, having something like a verifiable reward, having this like the bug is solved now. Yeah. That's what allows it to just keep going until it's done.
Yeah. So the looping only is going to work if you do all of the other steps first. That's why we're continuously extending these techniques that we've been trying using, right? From the prompt engineers to spec-driven, then context engineer to manage your context, and then harness, which is make sure that they're going to have the guardrails. And now that all of the steps are done, then it's time to introduce a loop. Don't introduce a loop before that, because you're going to just trust the LLM. They're going to hallucinate, and that makes a lot of bugs, like my little demo app. They use slide one, deletes the whole items. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I use the looping to like page speed or something. You might go loop through and keep running through and fix all the little errors and keep looping till you get to whatever.
Yeah.
But with personas, are you finding it's less and less required to sort of have those separate personas set out? Because I think that we're finding that we don't need to have as many skills set and stuff like that. The models have developed. Are you finding that they're becoming more and more redundant to have to label out all the skills and personas like we used to?
Yeah, I do think the models are getting better. The context also is getting larger, right? However, as I mentioned, when I use different personas, they actually conflict with each other, right? So that's what I like to know why they are conflicting. And that's probably what I'm looking after most, because again, LLM is great and will take over and is going to work as a very senior engineer or a very senior designer. But then when you give it persona, they actually have a very easy, small details just for that particular actoring that they are doing. Yeah. And as I mentioned, if you don't want to use all the personas, at least use the adversarial. I am very impressed every time I use it, and I can use like the same pull request 5 times after fix all the PRs. They always find something new. So I find it very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. I've used OpenSpec and that is standard at BMAD as well, but I really am right now. I'm a fan of OpenSpec and using TDD after that. My question was around what you were saying about the adversarial persona. Is it like in the same context when I tried that a couple of times that it's actually like it doesn't find much, but if it's like for example using another LLM or going out and then coming back in again and giving it like as if like it's some other agent's work and then giving it as an adversarial role that now find holes in it, it finds some issues. Have you noticed that as well? Like what's your practice? You do it in the same session?
No, I actually, as I mentioned, every step that when I'm solid, for example, my brainstorm, and if my context window is too large, I will stop the brainstorm in the middle and write down everything that we are following up questions, and then I'll start again. So you might want to look into the talk that I mentioned to you, like the dump zone is very important, right? So that's where you ask them 3 times and they're not understanding you. It's time to stop a new session. That's very required. That's probably the hardest thing to do automated, because your compact will take over your decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, but using like a loop or something in that case is actually, it's really hard to actually break that process, because I've given like the other person was mentioning earlier also, like speeding up the page and those kind of things. And I'm actually I have that put into that the context, like for the dumb zone specifically. I'm actually monitoring that what the remaining context is, and when it comes to the 40%, I get nervous. But obviously, like it's already in the dumb zone. But the problem is that how do you stop in the loop? Actually, that's the challenge.
Yeah, so you can write a guardrail, right? I haven't done it yet, but I know it's possible. You can have a guardrail, and also you can emphasize on a prompting to use sub-agents as much as you can. So sub-agents is when the orchestrator agents, like the main window, we open a new window and using a tooling, especially when they use toolings. You mentioned to me that you're going to open, I don't know, some Playwright or end-to-end test. That's a perfect edge case to use a tooling in a sub-agent, because you don't want to mess with the context window now. And all your tokens are just like, I didn't go into details here, but as more your context window get larger, more tokens used for each section. So it's actually exponential. So the first window, you just have your questions. And then the second window has your questions, LLM answer, and your next questions. And it just keep getting bigger and bigger, larger and larger. So what you want to do is ask the LLM to actually use sub-agents for any tooling that they can, and write guardrails or SKUs to, instructions like using, I forgot it, like, what is it? The cursor rules. I don't know if it's the thing, cursor rules. Make sure they use sub-agents as much as possible. That's how I will control you in the looping. Yeah. I think that was a few questions. Well, okay. Excited about questions. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thanks for the present. This is very good, especially for the persona part. So my question is about what if you are the one of the persona that in the real job? So for example, one of my recent job is I'm a QA, but at the same time, in the data pipeline, we need to onboard the business. So the business have no idea about the coding. In order to make it deterministic, so there's too many things that needs to onboard with the business to start kick off the pipeline. So for my role is to making sure the QA is fine, and on top of that, I need to simplify the process. So basically, I'll be the spec improvement, uplift the persona plus the QA persona. So it's not like you have something that you build, so you're gonna do some like uplift with any tips that for that kind of scenario.
Yeah, great question. So for the QA is probably the hardest part, but any other personas that I would say to you is that normally, why I say the QA, because QA is actually using a lot of tooling, right? And also QAs are just a little harder to automate, but for anything that you wanna, the way that you wanna write your personas is using Markdown. It's pretty much just a Markdown, and then you can use your agent orchestration to use the personas every time they need it. So you mentioned that you want to do agnostic, but agnostic is actually your orchestrator. Your orchestrator is the one going to decide which persona they're going to use for each task. You can actually give instructions, say, oh, when I'm finishing publishing this app, I want you to use QA using this perspective mode and use this tooling for testing. I think that's what they're going to, does that answer your question?
Roughly high level, I'll probably come to you separately.
Okay, no worries, yeah. But no worries. But the orchestrator is the one that's going to choose what persona is. Yeah.
So just kind of touching on the sub and personas.
Yep.
Have you found any success? Are we doing all of this in one model, like an Opus Fable, or are we selecting different models for select personas? The only reason why I ask is because I can't read Opus output. There's just too many words. So I've been finding more success using something like a Terra or a Sol. But yeah, just kind of looking at how you structure your personas and then your workflow in sub-agents.
Yeah, great question. I have not used like multiple models between providers. Like, for example, if I am Opus, I will use like Haiku for small tooling, and also I will use Sonnet for other small tasks. But any of these the models use like Fuse, OpenAI, they have the main one, the more thinking one. So I normally use my orchestrator as the thinking one, and then it will invoke sub-agents like sub-session using the other cheaper models. That's how I've been working on, and it's been working very well for me. I mainly use Opus, but I have used GPT and others, and it works pretty well too. Yeah, but the same thing. Thinking agent is the one that you want to use as the orchestrator. That's my recommendation. Yeah, but you might want to explore yourself as well. Yeah.
And sorry, just to follow up on that, I think at enterprise, since most of it is consumption-based pricing, I think that's why I was looking at more of a. I mean, for Luna, it's incredibly cheap. So obviously, you can't use Fable to orchestrate and then deploy a GPT model. But yeah, I think that explained and answered my question. Thanks.
Yeah. So even use open source, just again, the thinking model is the one that you want as orchestrator. Yeah. Yeah, but great question. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let's give Leo another. Oh, wait, one more. All right. One more. Quick.
If you have time. Yeah.
Thank you. This is a really good talk, very expressive. So, sorry, I got two questions. The first one, for the loop engineer, when I was doing, I think for my experience, the backend is quite easy to fix and like the AI to approve that. But when I doing for some front end, especially for some UI UX fix, it's a little bit hard to judge that, and I need to like check on my local. And yeah, does there have some ways to improve that? It's just because that's a little bit time consuming. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So what I mentioned is that using the loop engineer trusted LLM is much better on the back end because that is UI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was we talking about toolings. Every time you involve tooling, just like I mentioned to her for QA, it's a little harder because then you have to open the browser and LLM actually needs to trust in another tooling to get the inputs, where in the back end, normally just even testing, they have like even green or bad. Yeah. Honestly, I haven't not found the perfect solution yet, but depends on the tool that you use and also the model if you interpret better, like image to text for UI or something like that. But I don't really have a perfect answer for you, unfortunately. Yeah, I have the same problem sometimes.
We use the screenshots using AI to do that, but some small like color contrast or some small things is quite easy. But if you wanted to do some like interactive, it's still very hard to do that. So like,
have you used the Playwright timeline? I want to look into that.
I know the Playwright. Yeah.
You know the Playwright has a timeline.
Timeline. I don't know that.
So the way that works is Playwright, for who is not aware, is an end-to-end test automation tooling. So what it can do is like it's for software engineering, not LLM, but you can actually write tests that will actually open a real browser, and then it will take screenshots and navigate as an interaction as a user, like using keyboard or mouse simulation. And the Playwright tooling, they have a very nice feature called the timeline, which you can record all the way with small snapshots. Every step that, like every interaction, they actually take a snapshot, and then later can read these logs and give to LLM. I believe that might help you to investigate all the way from top to bottom. Yeah, it's called. I think the timeline from Playwright. I'm gonna look into that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. One more question.
Sure.
It's my pain point actually. How do you like sync the docs documentation?
How to sync Git?
Yeah.
So all the documentation now is in Markdown.
Of course.
So you sync using GitHub. Make sure that I'm assuming also every time you're using work trees, right? Make sure they always put the work trees back to your master or whatever main branch you use, because then on next time you start a new session, LLM has the updated data instead of stale data. Yeah. I use Git for managing all the specs, and also I like to triage them later because more documentation, more code, more confused LLM have to start. And even yourself, sometimes I'm like, oh, why did I write these specs? You don't know. So sometimes I like to have a triage. I have a script that are actually doing that. So I say, let's clean up some our specs, make sure everything's already done. Just documentation, or instead of documentation, the spikes or any investigation, get rid of that. We already have the decisions, and then I clean up all my documentation. I find this helps a lot with both context window and also yourself to find documentation as well. Yeah.
Because like recently I found a cloud like lots of comments, like very chatty actually. The comments. Also,
you mean comment coding? This helps
coding.
LLM and all the engineers as well. But yeah, if you think that's too much, you can always ask them to tidy up. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Yeah. There's one question. I appreciate everybody staying over, by the way. Yeah.
Hey, thanks. So really like your talk. I do a lot of the stuff that you basically mentioned here, but I have a question around like you talk about the dumb zone, and you also mentioned about using the orchestrator agent as a thinking model and sub agents. So when it comes to the orchestration agent getting into the dumb zone, what do you do? Like, do you just stop the thread and like create a new one, or
I call the handover phase. That's what I've been calling.
Yeah,
it's time to hand over. Yep. Stop what you do. Make sure that you have all the follow-up questions. Don't miss them out, right?
Yeah.
And also, I even have sometimes when I start a new session, I use the skill as well to search from other sessions. So because Cursor, Cloud, any other tooling, they actually have all these. They save all of these files on your computer, right? Yep. So you can say, "Oh, I discussed this a few days ago. I can't remember." You can actually use tooling to do that. So that's how I do it. And what I recommend to you is actually when it dumps on, the only thing you can solve that is handover. There's no other way. Handover. When they say you're right 3 times, hand over. Don't talk to them anymore. You're gonna waste your talking, your money, and your time. Yeah, and you're gonna be very grumpy. Yeah. Yeah. No, sorry. You can follow up. Yeah.
One quick follow up. Like, so how do you basically track that though? Like, so like if like let's just say it's going into a long task. Like I had like a couple of tasks that ran like
couple of hours or something like that. And then as part of it, like there is obviously it is hitting a compaction window. And like how do you basically stop that and get into this one? That's a follow-up.
Yeah. So the approach that I take is actually small tasks. So I don't do like 3-4 tasks in the same window. No, this task is to create a button. That's it. Oh, but the button needs to be blue. We can do this later, so let's do it in the next session. So it's a bit more time consuming, but actually that's how I will manage the dump zone. Yeah, small tasks. So then you mean less context window, which means less tokens. So you actually have you can use way more cursors, the primo bundle, no? Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's give Leo another round of applause.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.